Hey, what's going on, everyone? So, according to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 80 to 95% of people who lose weight will eventually regain all the weight that they lost. 80 to 95% of people. And a lot of people will argue that, well, it's because of the diet. And certainly there are things that you can do and improve with your actual strategy. But I'm here today to argue why I think it is more of a mindset and an approach thing. And for those who don't know me, my name is Luke Briggs. I've been a coach for over 10 years, and I've worked with nearly 3,000 clients. I'm the owner of the Total Life Fitness Academy, where we specialize in helping parents and busy professionals lose body fat, build muscle, and have more energy. So I was recently having a conversation with actually quite a few people about the same topic. And just know that if you're listening to this, um, I'm not picking on you specifically. I've had this conversation with a number of people recently. And they'll set a goal to lose a certain amount of weight. They'll get there or close to it and then slowly start creeping back. Let's say someone starts at 200 pounds. They have a goal to get to 170. They might get to 180, 175. They're getting close. And then, they kind of take the foot off the gas pedal. They start going out to eat a little bit more. They stop, they maybe miss a workout here or there. And before you know it, they've backpedaled and they've gained, some, or in some cases, unfortunately, all of the weight back. And the reason why I believe this is because people put an end date on their goals. They want to lose 30 pounds in 90 days. They want to lose 40 pounds in 6 months. They want to lose 70 pounds in a year. And I'm not saying these things aren't attainable. I believe that, though, that we're going about this the wrong way. Fitness has no end date. Fitness does not have an end date. It's something that you always do. Being healthy is something that you're going to do for a long time. I want to use an example for you. I think that a lot of times when we're getting married, we put so much emphasis on the wedding, the 9 months or 12 months or 2 years or however long you're engaged. You focus so much on the wedding date that a lot of times people forget to focus on after the wedding, which is why many marriages oftentimes end in divorce. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm some, marriage expert or anything like that, but ultimately it's because people just focus on the short term, but not the long term. So you need to have a long-term plan with your fitness and not just go back to your old ways. And that requires becoming a different person, a different version of yourself, a healthier version of yourself. And that means not just doing always what you want, but doing what's required. Not always just doing what you want, but doing what's required. And it's a lot easier to just sit around and eat whatever we want, eat out all the time. And I think we see a lot of people who are doing the flexible dieting, who eat out whenever they want, and they get great results. Now, those are far and few between. The majority of people work hard, not only in the short run, but in the long run. I mean, I'm personally not going out to eat that much, right? Like I make the majority of my meals at home. A lot of people think there's a final destination. I remember when I was coming up in my fitness journey, I used to think that like saw like all these guys who are like super ripped and shredded, and I'd think like, gosh, I can't wait to get there. And then the first time I did a photo shoot myself, I remember thinking like, well, I can't just stop right now. I got to keep going. I'm not just all of a sudden magically going to be able to do whatever I want and keep these results, because we see all these people on Instagram posting these pictures of themselves slamming burgers and sodas and alcohol. They literally just do that. They don't actually do that. Like they probably, a lot of those like Instagram influencers who are super ripped, unless they have like freakish genetics or just like super young, they're probably not doing that 95% of the time. They just don't show that. They show what sells, right? I'm not going to say I've never, shown that you can do those things as well, but 90 to 95% of the time you need to be on track. It's allowing yourself to have a little bit of flexibility once you've earned that right. So what is the solution to all this? What is the solution to having a long-term approach? And in my opinion, it is focusing on the process and not the outcome. Focusing on process-based goals, not necessarily outcome-based goals. And I'll tell you what I mean. So I used to be obsessed with the weight scale. I would step on the scale, and if it said what I wanted to say, it'd be a great day. And then if it didn't say what I wanted to say, I would let it affect me for hours afterwards. I would let it determine my self-worth. I would let something external determine my self-worth. And I know many of you can relate to this. The scale can be so frustrating. But if we don't tie ourselves and tie our results to a number and an outcome, and we instead tie it to the process, the outcome will just happen as a byproduct. So what are things that you should focus on, or at least that I believe are important to focus on in order to lose weight and keep it off? And I'm going to list 7 things right now, and I'm going to go through them, because these are the things that really matter that will lead to the weight loss if that is your goal. Number 1 is hitting your macros, your calories, your protein. So for those who don't know what macronutrients are, they are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. And calories are basically made up of macros. Alcohol is kind of the 4th macro, quote unquote. But anyone who joins our program inside Total Life Fitness, we always start them generally with calories and protein. If someone is already tracking their macros and is comfortable with it, we might add in carbs and fats, but they aren't always necessary to get the results, as long as you're keeping the calories, protein, and fiber under control. So if you don't know like how many calories you need, a good place to start, you can find a bunch of different calorie calculators online. I mean, some are better than others, but having a starting point can at least give you a place to start. And you got to be honest with yourself and your activity level and everything like that. Obviously, we just do that for our clients, but that's one thing that you can do as well, is just find that, and then you just kind of adjust it over time. But really finding specific targets are super important. And a lot of people will just focus on the exercise, but not on the nutrition. When it comes to weight loss, you always hear like abs are made in the kitchen. And it's so true, because we have much more control over the nutrition than we do over our energy output. We hear, calories in, calories out is the most important thing for weight loss, and it is, but we don't have 100% control over the calories outside of the equation, because we don't know like exactly how many calories we're burning off, because obviously every single day is different. But we do have 100% control over the calories inside of the equation, which is the nutrition. Let me say that again. We do have 100% control over the calories inside of the equation. So focus on hitting your nutritional targets. That's number 1. Number 2, focus on getting at least 8 to 10,000 steps per day. So there's actually science behind this. And I was always just kind of wondering like, well, where'd that 10,000 steps a day thing come from? I thought it was just some random number I always told people. But within the last year, I found a study, according to the Journal of the American Medical Association, studying 78,430 adults living in the United Kingdom. It found that if you get 9,800 steps per day, those who average 9,800 steps per day, that was kind of the threshold to help you reduce the risk of dementia by 50%. By getting 9,800 steps per day, you reduce your risk of dementia by 50%. You also reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease by 80%. And even getting 3,800 steps in a day, and this is walking at like a decently brisk pace, you reduce your risk of dementia by 25%. And health is important. And this also has correlated with obesity as well. Just getting more movement in throughout the day oftentimes is even better for you than getting your exercise in. So number 2 is getting 8 to 10,000 steps per day. Number 3 is strength training at least 3 days per week. In my opinion, strength training at least 3 days per week. So why is strength training important? Strength training is important because it helps you build muscle and increase lean body mass. And I know what a lot of you are thinking, well, I don't want to get super muscly like a bodybuilder. Unless you are intentionally trying to do that, you're not going to do it. I remember there was a famous quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger. People would always complain, Arnold, I don't want to look like you. And his reply was, don't worry, you never will. Because it's super, super hard to get big and jacked like that. Like, you're not going to get jacked by accident. It's something that you intentionally do. Every bodybuilder in the world would love to have that problem. So strength training at least 3 days per week. Lean muscle tissue is the most metabolically active tissue at rest. So the more muscle mass you have, the better your metabolism is. And the metabolism is the thing that we want to focus on. So if you're doing 3 times per week of strength training, I generally recommend full body exercise, because that way you can hit every single muscle group 3 times per week. If you're doing 4 times per week, you can start getting into push pull, where you have, upper lower splits, where you're doing 2 or 3 upper body and then 1 or 2 lower body. And then if you do, 4, 5, or 6 a week, you can do, the body part splits, push pull legs, splits like that. Like, basically pushing exercises are like your, push-ups, bench press, overhead press. Triceps are pushing muscles. Pulling exercises, any sort of rowing variation, lat pull downs, seated rows, dumbbell rows, things like that. Leg exercises, obviously squats, deadlifts, leg curl, leg extension, back extension, leg press, things like that. So the reason why, if you're going to only do 3 days per week, you want to do full body, is because if you're only hitting each muscle group one time, you're not going to stimulate your muscles as well. You want to stimulate your muscles as much as you can while they can still recover throughout the week. And generally, we can stimulate our upper body is going to recover more easily than our lower body, because we're using more muscle mass. And the reason why, you may be asking, what are compound movements? And those are multi-joint exercises. So the squat, for example, is a multi-joint or compound movement, because when you're initiating the movement, you're breaking at your hips, your knees, and your ankles. So you're working across 3 joints when you're doing a squat. Whereas if you're just doing a leg extension, you're just working across your knee joint. It's an isolation exercise, a single joint exercise. So that's the difference between an isolation exercise and a compound movement, is the number of joints the exercise moves across. So you're going to get way more bang for your buck, especially a lot of people who listen to this are, busy parents or professionals, by doing compound movements. So those are squats, the hip hinge pattern, like RDLs or deadlifts, pressing exercises like push-ups, dumbbell bench, barbell bench, overhead press if you have the range of motion or ability to do that, or thoracic spine mobility, shoulder mobility. Then you could do that. Pulling exercises, again, like rows, because with rows, you're moving across multiple joints, obviously the elbow joint and the shoulder joint, chest supported rows. If you're able to, chin-ups and pull-ups. My argument is that most people think they can do them and they really can't. So I do them assisted, or I just do lat pull downs. Also, like single leg movements can be good ones, like split squats. If you have decent amount of weight to lose, I don't necessarily recommend doing single leg exercises, especially with like lunges, because you're gonna be putting a lot of pressure on your knees. So I'd instead do, if you have a gym, like more machine-based things like leg press, or doing squats and things like that, or even more hip dominant exercises. So that's definitely how I would set it up. And you can even do core-based movements in there as well. But strength training at least 3 days per week is going to be important to increase lean body mass. Number 4, cardio as needed. What things to focus on? Cardio as needed. So it depends on your goals. Like, if you love doing cardio, it can be a great tool if your goal is to lose weight. Do you have to do cardio to lose weight? Not necessarily in the beginning. Cardio can be added in to get a little bit of extra fat burning, but you do not need to necessarily do cardio if you don't love it. What are the modes of cardio that I like are, for most people, ones that are fairly joint friendly, where you can do a lot of repetitions without worrying about getting hurt. So running is an example. If you love to run and your body feels good doing it, by all means do it. If you don't love running, you do not need to run. because especially if you have a decent amount of weight that you desire to lose, if you run, there's that constant pounding and repetition on your joints, especially if your form breaks down when you're running. You could end up potentially with injuries. I'm not saying you will get injured with running, but there is a greater potential risk for injury if you have some weight that you want to lose. Whereas if you do things like the elliptical, rowing machines, stationary bike, stair climber, things like that, they're going to be a little bit more joint friendly for you. So cardio as needed. Number 5, sleep at least 7 hours per night. If you want to lose weight and keep it off, sleep at least 7 hours per night. So there was a study. Where are we here? I'm just finding it. So researchers from the University of Chicago found it was a peer review in the peer-reviewed journal, the Annals of Internal Medicine. They found that sleep duration didn't necessarily affect weight loss. However, it affected what you lost, muscle versus fat. So subjects who got 8.5 hours of sleep per night, over half of the weight loss consisted of fat. Subjects who got only 5.5 hours of sleep per night, 25% of their weight loss consisted of fat. So in other words, the people who slept less lost a lot more muscle. So if you sleep less, you could lose more muscle. Your body's greatest concentration of hormones is released when you are sleeping. So you want to make sure that you are getting enough sleep so that you can preserve as much muscle mass and as much lean body mass as possible. So make sure to get sleep. And that's something that transparently I've been working these last few months on getting more of and have. Number 6, keep life stress low. I know a lot of you are going to say, but my life is super chaotic. I have a lot going on, and there are certain things that are obviously out of your control. I'm talking about the things that you can control. And in my opinion, I see a lot of people overextending themselves. Like, sure, you have, your kids' events and things like that, but do you really need to be, doing trivia night or always volunteering on all the boards or being involved in literally every single thing? And I don't know, that's up to you. One thing that's worked really well for me to keep my life stress low is identifying my top priorities, which for me are my family, my business, and serving clients and serving all of you, even with this podcast. And number 3, my personal health routines. Anything else that is reoccurring in nature that I'm asked to do is a no. Just for right now, not necessarily forever, but for right now. And recently, like I've been asked to be in, numerous book clubs, numerous, other workout groups, numerous, sports leagues. I've been asked to be in numerous fantasy sports leagues, and I always turn them down because those are not going to give me more time with my family. Those are not going to give me more time for my business, and those are not going to help me with my personal health routines. So then it's a no. People are always wondering, well, should I say yes or no? If you know what your top priorities are, it's very easy to answer yes or no. So just understand your top priorities. So keeping your life stress low. And your priorities may be completely different than mine, and that's okay. Those are just my top priorities. And that's just how I approach it. You approach it however you want. If you feel like you are way overextended right now, start cutting back on things. If you find that you are struggling to have time for workouts and meal prep and all these things, what can you cut back on? Are you staying up each night and watching multiple episodes and 2 hours of TV? Make it one episode. There, you just saved an hour right there. You get an hour more sleep. It improves your recovery, decreases your stress. So that's number 6, is keep your life stress low. Number 7, for how to lose weight and keep it off, is have an ownership mindset, not a victim mindset. Everything is your fault. And you may think, well, Luke, that's kind of harsh of you to say. So if you are always a victim and it's always someone or something's fault for why you don't have what you want, you are not going to succeed to the degree that you want to succeed. If you're always placing blame on someone else, blaming your spouse, your kids, your parents, your friends, work, how busy you are, if you're always blaming something else on why you don't have the results, your genetics, like for me, for years, I would blame my genetics for why I didn't have the muscle that I wanted or why I didn't have the body that I wanted. I would blame that it's not the right time. But in reality, that was just false. That was just false. That was just the story that I was telling myself. I was in control this whole time. And it's great news because once you realize that you are completely in control, then you realize that you can make a decision to change at any point. Just take back control. Make time for meal prep. Make time for your workouts. Make time for tracking your food. Make time for tracking your measurements, tracking your data. That's another thing to focus on. Actually, if I want to add number 8, is track your measurements. So many people, just wing it and randomly weigh themselves at different times during the day and different times of the week. Having measurements and data is super important. But you are in control. So things in review that you need to control in order to get the results are hitting your macros, calories, and protein, number 1. Number 2, getting 8 to 10,000 steps per day. Number 3, strength training at least 3 days per week. 4, adding cardio as needed. Number 5, sleeping 7 hours per night at least. Number 6, keeping your life stress low. Number 7, having an ownership mindset. And then number 8, tracking data. And we have our clients track weight measurements, progress photos, also some other biomarkers like sleep, stress, energy, hunger, things like that. And if you focus on these things, the result will just happen as a byproduct. Do you want to be fit for the next 90 days or next 100 days? Or do you want to be fit for the rest of your life? Then why are you in such a hurry to do it? I've typically found that the faster someone is trying to lose weight, the longer it's going to take them. Anytime someone tells me that they're trying to lose 30 pounds in 90 days, I already know they're going to fail long term. They might lose 30 pounds in 90 days, but they've put a deadline on it. They've put a deadline on it. And I get it. Like when you're in a place that you don't want to be, like if you're unhappy or unconfident right now, you want to get out of that pain. So it's natural to want to get out of that pain as quickly as possible. I can relate. I can resonate with that. Don't put a deadline on it. Don't put a deadline on it. Focus on the long term. Last thing. Why are we so hesitant to change? I think a lot of times when we realize that we need to be fit and healthy the rest of our lives, not just for the next 90 days, if we want to sustain these results, we're afraid of who we have to become. Because we know right now we're comfortable. We're comfortable watching multiple episodes every night. We're comfortable hanging out with our friends at the bar a couple times per week. We're comfortable sleeping in instead of getting up earlier and working on our goals. It's uncomfortable to not do those things. Change is scary because of who we have to become. However, I would ask you the question, is it worth it to get up a little bit earlier if it means that you can walk up the stairs without being out of breath? Is it worth it to start hanging out with healthier friends or changing where you're hanging out with friends so that you can lose weight and have more energy to play with your kids? Is it worth it for you to watch one episode at night and go to bed an hour earlier so you can get more sleep and improve your recovery so that you can walk into your closet and feel confident to put on any item of clothing that you want because you are loving how you're looking and feeling? I can't answer that question for you. You have to answer it for yourself. And there's no right or wrong answer to it either. But if you're at a point where you want to just get the weight off, but keep it off in the long run and stop yo-yoing up and down, losing 20 pounds, gaining 20 pounds, losing 20 pounds, gaining 20 pounds, then you need to become a healthy person, stop putting an end date on your fitness, and start accepting that this is a lifestyle. And that's great news because you are going to feel amazing, confident, energetic, not only in the short run, but for a very long time. So hopefully this is helpful and this message resonates with you, and we will chat soon.